WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. First, our top stories. At the first anniversary marking Chariot massacre gets underway in Dakar with Gambian President Barrow in attendance.
They are silenced by the very forces they have served with courage and dignity. Today, Africa mourns and condemns the event of that gloomy day.
In Cote d'Ivoire, opposition Gbagbo vows to continue to fight against Ouattara's fourth term, launches initiative. Rights defenders demand restoration of constitutional order in Guinea-Bissau, condemn military takeover as election theft. And WAEC says nearly 1 out of 4 candidates failed core mathematics and social studies in Ghana.
They indicated that the candidates showed weaknesses in the following. 1. Representing mathematical information in a diagram. 2. Solving global mathematics-related problems.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. Let's begin here in Senegal, where the commemoration of the 81st anniversary of the Chariot massacre, one of the darkest chapters in African military history, is underway in Dakar. Gambian President Adama Barrow is among the dignitaries who joined President Bassirou Faye in Dakar for the ceremony, which honors the Senegalese tirailleurs killed on December 1, 1944, after demanding their unpaid wages for serving in World War II. Recall between 1,200 and 1,800 African soldiers from 17 territories were shot by French colonial forces. This year's observance comes as Senegal moves to restore historical truth about the massacre. A national committee has been set up to rehabilitate the Chariot site, advance scientific research, and ensure the story is taught in schools. Recent archaeological findings have uncovered real burial sites and evidence suggesting multiple forms of massacre. Here is Gambian President Adama Barrow presenting his speech.
It is regrettable that exactly 81 years ago today, the sacred blood of Africa's sons was mercilessly shed on this very soil. The cries of unarmed heroes who have traveled across oceans were silenced by the very forces they had served with courage and dignity. Today, Africa mourns and condemns the event of that gloomy day. We continue to recognize that the citizens of the Gambia and the Republic of Senegal are one people with the same ancestry. Our division and differences stem from the boundaries drawn by the very powers that subjected our ancestors to unspeakable exploitation. As evidence of this, the River Gambia flows through our two territories, and we share the same family ties. Our histories are inseparated, and our cultures and destinies are closely linked. When the Senegalese infantry marched to war, they did not march from Senegal alone. They came from across French West Africa. Gambians, although under British colonial rule at the time, also sent their sons to fight in Boma as part of the Gambia regiment. Among them was my maternal grandfather.
Gambian President Adama Barrow speaking there. Let's now cross over to neighboring Guinea-Bissau, where reactions continue to pour in following the recent coup and the establishment of a military government. In a joint statement issued on Sunday in Dakar, several civil society and human rights groups condemned the latest intervention by the army, describing it as a deliberate and unacceptable attack on the sovereignty of the Bissau-Guinean people. While calling for an immediate return to constitutional order, the NGO stressed that the military takeover in Guinea-Bissau is not merely a coup, but rather a calculated attempt to steal an election. Augustine Cooley reports.
In the joint statement, the West African human rights defenders against the confiscation of votes in Guinea-Bissau call on ECOWAS and the African Union to immediately proclaim results of the November 23, 2025 elections and ensure the declared winner swiftly ascends to power. They further demand an immediate return to constitutional order and urge all political and social actors in the country to engage in an inclusive national dialogue under international supervision, including the release of political prisoners. In reaction to these demands, Ibrahima Khan, an African Union governance expert aligns his analysis with these concerns.
The reality is that his own people have just taken the power, refusing that the Electoral Commission release the result of the election. So I fully agree with the civil society organization's statement, because, a coup d'etat is always prepared few days, before. But this is something that was cooked at the office of the president, so we cannot call it a coup.
Meanwhile, the call for a return to constitutional order in Guinea-Bissau remains urgent, especially as ECOWAS and the African Union continue to struggle with restoring democratic governance in the Central Sahel region, where 3 countries remain under military rule following consecutive coups. However, Ibrahima Khan says,
in the middle of Sahel, if you look at it, this coup didn't happen during an electoral process. But here, the government organized its own replacement, but giving the power to a military. And here, it's about also knowing the result of the election. And ECOWAS' credibility this time is engaged because there is something that needs to be done to make sure that at least the will of the people is respected.
As this troubling trend reaches its peak, West African civil society groups, including human rights defenders and activists, have announced their refusal to accept silence, fear, or uncertainty in the face of escalating attacks on democracy in the sub-region.
Augustine Curley filed that report. Meanwhile, Guinea-Bissau's military rulers have banned protests and strike as they tighten control ahead of a high-level visit by West Africa's ECOWAS bloc that is seeking to restore constitutional order following last week's coup. The military government, which seized power in what some West African leaders have termed a sham coup, announced late on Sunday that all demonstrations, strikes and activities regarded as threats to peace and stability were prohibited. Sakli Janko reports.
The directive also ordered public institutions, ministries and state secretariats to reopen and resume operations. The announcement followed the protests in Bissau on Saturday, where hundreds, primarily youths, demanded the release of detained opposition leaders and the publication of presidential election results. The mediation team from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, comprising the presidents of Togo, Cape Verde and Senegal, along with the ECOWAS Commission President, was expected in Bissau on Monday. The delegation aims to persuade the coup leaders to restore constitutional order and release the contested presidential election returns. ECOWAS has warned it may impose sanctions on individuals or groups responsible for disrupting Guinea-Bissau's electoral and democratic processes. The interim president, installed by military officers, Major General Hota Inta, said the coup was necessary to ward off a plot by narco-traffickers to capture Guinean democracy and vow to oversee a transition that would last 1 year, beginning immediately. The coup reflects a continued pattern of instability in Guinea-Bissau, a major cocaine transport hub with a long history of military interventions in politics.
Sakli Janko filed that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Côte d'Ivoire, the opposition party PPACI has launched an initiative for the liberation of prisoners of conscience, ILPO. The party, led by former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo, aims to secure the release of several hundred activists arrested following the banned demonstration of October 11, 2025. PPACI is also calling on its members to support the families of the detainees as part of its broader push for political and civil rights. Christopher Teacher completes the story.
According to the PPACI, this new initiative aims to restore democracy in Côte d'Ivoire. The opposition party of former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo says this commitment necessarily involves challenging what it describes as President Alassane Ouattara's illegal fourth term. Here is Laurent Gbagbo speaking.
We must continue to fight against the 4-term limit. In a country with this constitution, a citizen wants to serve 4 terms. With this constitution, you want to serve 4 terms? Where did you come from? Never forget that the reason we are gathered here is because we fought against the 4-term limit. And because we fought against the 4-term limit, they arrested more than 1,000 people.
Jean-Javé Chede, Secretary General of the PPACI, also outlined the various action planned under the ILPO initiative, These include demonstrating active solidarity with detainees through prison visits, legal assistance, and support for families, as well as undertaking diplomatic engagement and field operations to secure the immediate and unconditional release of those arrested. It should be recorded that more than 1,000 people were detained following a joint call by the PPACI and PDCI for a mass demonstration. Judicial authorities revealed that over half of those arrested were taken to court for summary proceedings. Among them, 394 individuals were found guilty of disturbing public order and sentenced to 3 years in prison.
A report from our Abidjan correspondent Marcel Arston Blair and voiced by Christopher Atucho. Now, in the Gambia, the Center for Victims of Human Rights Violations has welcomed the arrest of Sana Manjang, a former member of the notorious Jongleur Squad during Yahya Jammeh's regime. Manjang was captured over the weekend in Casamance during a joint Senegalese-Gambian security operation. Widely regarded as one of the most active members of the Jongleurs, the ex-soldier is accused of murder, enforced disappearances, and acts of torture committed during former President Jammeh's 22-year rule. Baba Haidara, a direct victim of these abuses and a founding member of the Gambia Center for Victims of Human Rights Violations, called on the relevant authorities to ensure the swift prosecution of Manjang. He spoke with WDR regarding the latest development.
First of all, I thank the Senegalese government for allowing this task force to do the arrest with the Gambian counterparts. It shows how good the relationship is. There are a lot of rumors circulating that somehow Jammeh is linked to it, but we can't say much unless these individuals are interrogated to know more about their plans. Though we know that he has something to do with it, but we would like to know the depth, and also more about what really transpired that evening that my dad was murdered.
My sincere condolences, but as a direct victim of the alleged act perpetrated by this Jongleur member, what do you want from the government?
These are very brutal murderers who we cannot trust leaving them out free. So one of the important things the government should do is to make sure that these people are kept out of the public. And if it means that they have to come up with new decree to make sure that they are detained before they're in court, they should do so and make sure that they are well kept away within reach of people that can help them to escape or things like that. So we have to be very vigilant dealing with this matter.
Baba Haidara is a founding member of the Gambian Center for Victims of Human Rights Violations. The crossover to Ghana, where the West African Examinations Council (WAEC) has confirmed a national education concern with the release of the provisional WASEC 2025 results, revealing a worrying surge in the outright failure rate, grade F9, across all 4 core subjects compared to the 2024 results. An analysis of the official data release shows that the percentage of candidates who failed core mathematics outright grade F9 has nearly quadrupled, rising from 6.10% in 2024 to an alarming 26.77% in 2025. Similarly, the failure rate for social studies has almost tripled in a single year, from 9.55% in 2024 to 27.50% in 2025. The massive increase in F9 grades signals a dramatic downturn in foundational knowledge among the total of 461,736 candidates who registered for the examination. The steepest increase was recorded in the core subjects that formed the basis for tertiary education entry. John Cappy is the Director of Public Affairs, WAEC.
First of all, let me indicate that the statistics that we have put out there just represent the results that we have published so far. There are some that have been withheld that we are investigating, and it's possible that if they are not found culpable, the percentage part could go up. But then, looking at the chief examiner's report that I have in front of me, I just want to stress the weaknesses of the candidates as was observed by the chief examiners. They indicated that the candidates showed weaknesses in the following: 1, representing mathematical information in a diagram. 2, solving global mathematics-related problems. 3, constructing cumulative frequency table from given data distribution. 4, making deductions from real-life problems. 5, solving application problems in simple interest. 6, translating word problems into mathematical expressions, and 7, interpreting of results from cumulative frequency curve. So these are areas that the chief examiners have observed weaknesses in the candidates' performance. Obviously, these are not topics that are outside the syllabus, and they're not outside the test blueprint. So from the general comment that was made, the chief examiners reported that the standard of the paper compared favorably with that of the previous years.
John Kapi, Director of Public Affairs, WIC, Ghana. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar and online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of the top stories. The first anniversary marking Chariye massacre gets underway in Dakar with Gambian President Barrow in attendance. In Côte d'Ivoire, opposition Gbagbo vows to continue to fight against Ouattara's fourth term launches initiative. Rights defenders demand restoration of constitutional order in Guinea-Bissau, condemn military takeover as election theft. WIC says nearly 1 out of 4 candidates failed core mathematics and social studies in Ghana. And still ahead, we do have the press review, a guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget, we are streaming live on wadr.org and do join our live streamings on YouTube and Facebook. Now, the Senegalese capital is hosting the first edition of West Africa's major cultural event, EcoFest, launched on Sunday by Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko at the Grand National Theatre of Dakar. The cultural event promises a spectacular range of activities, including art exhibitions, film screenings, and panel discussions. Jointly organized by ECOWAS, UEMOA, and the Senegalese government, EcoFest seeks to build a regional platform for the exchange of cultures to foster peace, regional integration, social inclusion, trade, and tourism, among others. As Abdullah Hassan reports, the festival is themed Political Change and Crisis in West Africa. What can culture do?
In her opening statement, ECOWAS Commissioner for Human Development and Social Affairs, Professor Fatou Sousar, underscored the importance of the EcoFest 2025 theme, Political Change and Crisis in West Africa. What can culture do?
The EcoFest 2025 is fully aligned with the 25-year vision of the ECOWAS, which aspires to an ECOWAS of people, peace and prosperity for all. This vision is based on the conviction that culture is an essential driver of social cohesion, lasting peace, and sustainable and inclusive economic development.
Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko was warmly welcomed on stage to unveil the EcoFest 2025 graffiti created by 4 of Senegal's best female graffiti artists. Officially declaring the week-long activity opened, Sonko emphasized the place of youth and women as agents of cultural exchanges to stabilize the region.
Today, culture faces unprecedented pressures. Cultural homogenization, the hegemony of certain exogenous modules, and the marginalization of our local languages and expressions threaten the identity of our people. It is therefore essential to protect our youth from these cultural aggressions. We must encourage them to engage in the preservation and promotion of our values while cultivating their creativity. These cultural mechanisms, among many others, remind us of a fundamental truth. Cultural integration has always preceded political integration in West Africa.
Hundreds of people, including delegates, diplomats and government representatives dressed in colorful African fabrics, gathered for the opening ceremony at the National Grand Theatre. While artists like Baba Mal, Sidike Jabate and Gyaki from Ghana made appearances on the opening day, cultural troupes from the West African sub-region will perform in the coming days. Film and documentary screenings, art exhibitions, and group sessions will be held on the sidelines of the regional cultural show that runs until December 7, 2025.
Abdullah Hassan filed that report.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
We head now to Abuja as we join Usman Umar for the newspaper review.
This is the press review coming to you from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. We have 3 major newspapers to take a look at today: the Daily Trust, the Punch, and The Nation newspaper. Beginning with the Daily Trust, which leads with developments in Nigeria's petroleum sector. The paper reports that the Dangote refinery is set to begin large-scale supply of petrol, up to 50 million litres daily, a move experts expect to ease chronic fuel shortages and stabilize prices nationwide and even beyond. Another major story focuses on the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. The regulator begins its 2025 oil licensing round today, which is aimed at attracting fresh investment into the sector and revitalizing exploration activity across the country. Now, let's move over to the Punch newspaper, which focuses on politics and accountability. One of its major stories highlights remarks by the cleric Tunde Bakari, who alleges that U.S. President Donald Trump designated Nigeria a country of concern, not because of terrorism alone, but due to America's strategic interest in Nigeria's oil reserves. The paper also reports on former Vice President Atiku Abubakar's call for a full probe into Nigeria's 17.5 trillion naira spending on pipeline security. Atiku describes the expenditure as excessive and demands transparency in how the funds were used. In the economic sector, Punch also reports that maritime engineers say weak regulatory standards are stalling Nigeria's ambition for $1 trillion blue economy, warning that the country risks losing huge revenue if reforms are not implemented. And that's a wrap on this segment as I return you back to the studios.
Many thanks, Usman Umar there in Abuja.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, this afternoon we turn to a chapter of African history that is as painful as it is essential to remember: the Taraye massacre of 1944. For decades, this event sat in the shadows, spoken of quietly, after distorted and sometimes completely erased from our collective memory. But this year, as Senegal marks the 81st anniversary, the country and the wider region is taking bold steps to finally confront and correct the historical record. As Senegal rolls out a series of measures, from a national memorial to new school curricula that tell a more honest story, today's conversation asks a critical question: what does true historical justice look like, not just for Senegal, but for an entire region whose sons were involved? Our guest is Professor Gugi Jeng, Head of African and Postcolonial Studies at the Sheikh Anta Diop University.
This marks the killing of a number of African soldiers who went to fight to defend France and the rest of Europe against Germany. And when they came back asking for their money to be paid to them, the authorities refused, and then they killed them. So this is something that cannot be accounted for, because we don't know due to the reason why such a number of people got killed without any reason whatsoever. And the objective of the government of Senegal and of the Senegalese and the African is to tell France and the Western world what happened, because this is something that should not have been done.
Senegal has announced plans for memorial, a documentation center, and the integration of this history into school curricula. How important is institutional memory in preventing future historical erasure across West Africa?
Well, memory is very important, because if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going to. So this is important for Senegal, for Africa, to know what they have gone through, the difficulty they have gone through, slavery, colonization, and this event, the killing of those soldiers from Africa. So it is important for the youth to know what has happened in the past, because if they don't know what has happened in the past, it will be very difficult for them to know what to do today and what to do tomorrow. So it is very important for the children of Senegal, for the children of West Africa, to understand what happened in the past in order to know how to behave with the Western world. Because this is something that should not have been done, and they did it to defend simply their own interests, forgetting about the interests of Africa, forgetting about what those people deserved after fighting for France.
The Taraye massacre has long been described as one of the darkest episodes in African military history. Why did it take decades for Senegal and the wider region to formally confront and correct the historical record?
Well, it happened in 1944, during the colonial period. So there was no, sovereign government in Senegal, no sovereign government in the other countries of Africa. So it was very difficult for the Africans at the time to have any, say in the business, in the issue. Now, from 1944 to 1960, it wasn't possible. And from 1960 up to the recent years, it wasn't also easy for African leaders to talk about this because they had just come out of colonial rule. So they didn't really find their bearings and in order to, lay the emphasis on this issue. Maybe it was something that was not central. There were other issues to be dealt with. So, for example, satisfy the needs of the people. And now, probably after those many years, the time has come for Africans to remember all this. But I believe that it's also due to the fact that new regimes have emerged in West Africa and in Senegal particularly, led by young people and who want to emphasize on sovereignty.
Professor Gugu Cheng is the head of African and Post-Colonial Studies at the Sheikh Anta Diop University, Dakar. In sport news, Nigeria's men's basketball team, the Tigers, fell to their second straight defeat in the ongoing FIFA World Cup qualifiers African window, leaving the former continental champions under early pressure as the campaign gathers momentum. The team, still in a rebuilding phase, struggled to find rhythm in their opening games as they slipped to consecutive losses, dampening hopes of a strong start to the qualifiers. The back-to-back defeats now put Sunday's fixture against Rwanda in sharp focus, with Nigeria needing a response to steady their campaign. The Tigers showed flashes of their trademark athleticism and transition play in both outings. A win for Nigeria would not only restore confidence but also keep their World Cup qualification hopes alive firmly as attention later shift to the next qualification windows. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Falilu So and Ismaila Kamara for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms, X, TikTok, Instagram, at WDR English. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is a repeat broadcast of our flagship health program, Well Buddy. I am Imo Edit. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.